We spent the past couple of years in a crazy hot market. Louisville home sales decline as demand outpaces supply. Effective communication is at the core of any situation. If you master these two ideas, you'll have a chance of being successful at residential real estate marketing. I think you need to be looking for investment opportunities that move the needle. The market will never crash if demand exceeds supply. This is what I've been telling you all along.
This is the Jay Pitts Show. And we're back, folks. Welcome back to the Jay Pitts Show here on Talk Radio 1080. I am your host, Jay Pitts. And no, your eyes do not deceive you if you are watching us online at any of our social channels or on YouTube. And the voice you hear just in a moment will not be your regular co-host, Mr. Ryan Harris. Fortunately for them, his family welcomed a beautiful baby boy into the world this week. And so he's got the much deserved week off. We're going to let him, have his baby moon. Right. But I feel very excited to bring to you another member of the team at JT Pitts and Associates, one of our pod leaders, Mr. Luke Andrews. He's going to be sitting in co-hosting with us here for the next little bit. Luke, how you doing, man?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
I'm great. So like Ryan and I share in common, Luke and I also share the hometown of Elizabethtown in common. It's an undertone of the show. Frankly, I think our listeners are probably tired of hearing about it. But if you hear things like that dog will hunt, or, when you're picking berries, you pick them all, things like that, Luke and I share from a common heritage.
Heritage is a good word for it. It is a good word for it.
It's a great word. Anyway, neither here nor there. We got a great show planned for you today. Luke is going to bring in some nice color commentary. He's already informed me that he's a pen and paper notes kind of person. I've got the laptop. He's got the gridded yellow legal pad with, I see at least 4 bullet points. Maybe more. 7 bullet points.
There's quite a bit on there. I doubt we'll get to all of it, but I'm a little old school as far as the note taking goes.
No, that's all good. Okay, so as always, we've got a great show for you. Today we're going to talk about, everything. We're going to span real estate, some tech. We're going to be talking some personal and some business, like how we like to do it. No different just because Ryan isn't in the mix. We've got question of the field from the field. We're going to get started with that here in a minute. We're going to go into a market update for you. Been a little bit since we talked about that. We're going to talk about office vacancy, which is a trend in commercial real estate here throughout the United States. We're going to talk about how Gen X is seeing some differences from prior generations, with respect to a segment in the real estate market. We're going to talk about Gen Z and their emergence, and their impact on the real estate market. And we might even talk a little bit about aliens.
I like that.
We had, a bombshell testimony, if you will. I'm going to speak like the headlines. Bombshell testimony at Congress the other day about the existence of aliens. And our federal government acknowledging such. And then we're going to finish it up with a little game of Would You Rather today, because, we always finish it up on a little goofier note. So with that, let's go to question of the field. Luke has got a question from an agent or a consumer. For the record, I don't know the answer. I don't know the question. Hopefully I know the answer.
I imagine you're going to know the answer a little bit to this, Jay, but curious to get your take. The question comes from one of those real estate agent Facebook groups that's out there. Sure. But this question comes up on our team quite a bit within the brokerage. And I thought it was really important because the market is tightening so much right now.
Sure.
And there's much smaller supply that's out there. Buyers are having a harder time finding homes. But this agent says, hey, I'm helping a client look for properties right now in a flood zone. Do people normally shy away from this type of home? How much does it normally impact the value, and how much does insurance normally run on something like this?
Wow. Okay, it's a great question. So this is an agent who's representing a consumer considering a home in a floodplain because of a lack of available inventory.
Yeah, they're just not able to find what they're looking for, and so they're starting to broaden their horizons a little bit, and things they would have never considered in the past. All of a sudden, it's like, well, if I really want to buy something, and I got to make some concessions.
Exactly. And such is the trend, right? Like I've often said, people say, I absolutely positively will never go above X on price. And we show them all the homes that are available under X. And then all of a sudden they decide, oh, well, maybe an extra 50,000 will get it done.
Yeah.
And maybe one less bedroom, or maybe we don't have to have a basement and a garage, but just a garage. So yeah, concessions are the norm when you're searching. So let's talk about floodplains specifically as the agent in question poses. Floodplains are a couple of different varieties. I will not pretend to be an expert, but I have had my fair share of experience navigating the world of floodplains. Probably most notably in my career, I got a call from what is actually a client of both of ours now. And when I talk a little further, you'll know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to say their name on the radio, but I get a call from them. They were referred to me after just purchasing a home. Young married couple, purchased a home only to find out the day prior to closing that the home was in a floodplain and required flood insurance. In this example, they were quoted a very nominal, very low. It was in the 100-year floodplain, which means technically it should only flood once every 100 years under those conditions. Now, obviously, it could flood, twice in 3 years under the right circumstances. Just the circumstances that would cause a flood only come around at once every 100 years. That's the reason for the title. So with that said, it is unlikely to flood. But in the event that it floods and it'd be such a catastrophic loss that they have to carry insurance. Their insurance, I want to say this was 5 or 6 years ago. So I'll kind of update that as well. But I want to say their insurance was like $300 a year. Something
really minimal.
Really minimal in that case. However, with literally almost no notice, they got a letter in the mail that said, no longer is your insurance $300 a year, it's $300 a month.
Whoa.
So it goes from $300 a year to $3,600 a year. And, $300 a month is probably another $100,000 in home price. So
sure. And that's not something that you could just turn around and say, well, you know what? I'll risk it. I'm not going to cover the flood insurance. It's required.
Exactly. So what they did, they had some options. They could have conducted what is called an elevation reading. Mm-hmm. They could have hired an engineer and had the elevation shot and see if they could get the property removed from the floodplain, which basically means the actual elevation of the structure itself, as
opposed to the land around it.
Land around it, because in most
backyard may flood, but the house won't.
Exactly. So in this case, there was a creek. There was a creek that ran adjacent to the property, and the backyard sloped off pretty steeply to a fairly large creek. Now, it could have been in the floodplain, even after the structure could have. They didn't want to risk it. They were so soured on the situation. They were soured on their prior agent that didn't notify them soon enough that allowed them to purchase the property. So really what happened there is they put the house on the market. And the new buyer, again, because inventory was rather slight, bought it, at least with full disclosure this time, and they took a little hit on price, but they got out unscathed.
Sure.
They bought a new home. And since then, we've made clients, unfortunately, that they've divorced, and we've helped both parties buy multiple real estate transactions since, in the time since. But it was just that one performance, right, of us doing the right thing, helping them get out of a jam that allowed us to, be kind of their agents for life. Sure. Now, how much? That is a wide span. It can go from that $300 a year to that $300 a month, and sometimes even more disparate, frankly.
Well, let's forget about the cost of the insurance right now. How does that affect the marketability of the house, price going forward? It's
a substantial hit. It really is a substantial hit, because as I just said a minute ago, that $300 a month, if that equates to $100,000 in home price, what you need to understand is most people buy based on payment. At least most folks. Most folks are not financially independent enough to put down enough money or pay cash for property. That their financing is really what determines. It's why we're seeing the slowdown in the market right now, because rates are higher.
Yeah.
So if you artificially increase the price per month by $300, then you've essentially dropped the price by $100,000. So that's the most nominal comparison I can make. And those are not exact numbers. I have to get the calculator out, but they're close enough. And you understand the concept. If you're listening, it's a pretty simple one. It's a dollar for dollar concept.
Exactly.
That reduces the affordability by X, and therefore you can sell it for that much less on average.
Well, and then looking down the road, I mean, right now, obviously, we're in such a low inventory market that supply and demand kicks in. Prices are up everywhere. Yeah. But if that starts to level off a little bit and supply starts to catch back up, then all of a sudden, as prices level off in most markets, I think some of these stigmatized probably isn't the best word for it, but I mean, having some version of a stigma to it, like a floodplain, those are going to drop pretty severely.
Absolutely.
And we don't know what the market's going to look like in 3 years. We've got pretty good ideas, but we don't know exactly where it's going to be. And so as clients are considering expanding and broadening into that, what's your best advice?
Well, I personally stay away from floodplain properties. Okay. But, don't over improve, right? If you happen to have a property that gets zoned into, okay, which is a FEMA thing,
because it can change over time.
It can change. All right. So my best advice would be stay away if you can. If you decide, make sure you have the understanding of just how close, do your homework, understand if there's ever an opportunity to get it out of the floodplain. And if so, you want to take those necessary measures. But I do agree. I think we've seen a less of a burden against floodplain properties over the last few years just because of supply and demand, and that's not always guaranteed. So anyway, that's about all the time we got for you here in segment one. So we're going to move on. Beyond the break, we're going to talk a little bit of market update, get you caught up on everything that is the Louisville real estate market. But thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you after a few sponsors here on the Jay Pitt Show, Talk Radio 1080. And we're back, folks. Welcome back to the Jay Pitt Show here on Talk Radio 1080. So Luke and I got a little long-winded talking about floodplain properties, but it was good info. It was good info, good for our consumers. We love doing consumer-facing content. A lot of the people that, tune into the show happen to be real estate agents, and I think it was probably good for both. It's our goal to strive to bring consumer-facing content, value-added kind of stuff. So I think that was it. We went a little long-winded, no biggie. I've never met a speaking opportunity that I didn't like. So I'll take credit for all of that. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the Louisville market update, though. It's been a little bit since we've done that. So on the surface, I just want to let you guys know a little bit of the trend that Luke alluded to in the last segment is just continuing. We're 24% down on closings year for year. Okay. Basically, year for year, the same week last week. So let me, since I muddled that up real good. This week in 2023, we had 288 closings, Luke. Last year, the same exact week, we had 381 closings. So almost 100 or down 24%. Okay. That's driven by listing performance. New listings this week in 2023, we had 331 new listings come to market in the Louisville MLS. Last year, the same exact week, we had 425, or a decrease of 22%. So almost like dollar for dollar, if you will, right? Almost, one for one. We are down 22% on listings, causing a 24% decrease in sales. And that's just units. That's not dollar volume. If you look at dollar volume because of increased prices is much, much more competitive. More specifically, right, we can just again say that the trend has continued. When I look at the market, Luke, I like looking at year over year for the same period of time. We talk about it in our team meetings a lot, every day, right? Yep. And we like to understand the linear relationships between inventory and ultimately sales. What we're seeing this year is we're seeing a substantial decrease in listings, leading to a fairly substantial decrease in sales. It should be noted, though, right, through, let's say, July 30th of 2023, we are down 1,899 closed sales from 2022. We are only down 114 sales versus the same time period in 2019. Okay, we're only down 229 sales from the same time period in 2020, right? And in case anybody was wondering about the difference between 21 and 22, which year was better for real estate? We're down 669 against 21. Hold on, down 669 against 21, down 1,899 against 22, which basically says that 22 was 1,200 sales ahead at this point in the year of even 2021.
So we're a lot more similar right now to 2018, 2019, which at the time we all said was the best years that we've ever had.
Great real estate markets.
Yeah.
Much more normal, right? I had a talk on the way over here with a mortgage company owner, a fella that said, I hear a lot of agents complaining. Well, yeah, of course they're complaining. They're complaining because the market isn't as easy as it has been in the unicorn years of, the second half of 20, all of 21, especially the first half of 22, but even the latter half of 22 was pretty substantial.
So we actually got to work for our paychecks.
We actually have to work for it. It doesn't find us. So the party time's over, right? The party time's over, and that's just really what it boils down to. I think staggering also, before we move on, Luke, is we're down 2,000 listings, 2,056 to be exact, 2,056 new listings to market from last year. We're down 1,899 sales.
But that's the thing is we're down all of these listings, but we're not necessarily down all the demand. So when these headlines are misleading when they talk about the market slowing down. Well, yeah, we've got fewer listings and fewer sales that are out there, but it's actually increased the speed of the market.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree because, yes, demand has not decreased at the same rate that supply has decreased. That's really what it boils down to. So a good seller that prices their home effectively and a good agent that pulls out all the tools in the toolbox, they can get results. They can get results with what they want. So anyway, there's that. Let's move on from that. We've got a few articles that we want to talk about. The first one I want to get into for the rest of this segment, and we might get two in, is essentially the office vacancy. Mm-hmm. Commercial real estate. So it's well publicized, right? That basically since the pandemic and maybe some trends before that with technology, with Zoom, with Google Meet and, the technologies that allow you to take face-to-face video meetings from afar and with high-speed internet access, that a lot of people are working from home. Okay. You have lots of benefits to actual employees, which you've actually experienced prior to your career in real estate. You worked at Humana, and you only had to go into the office, 2-3 days a week?
I was required to work from home 2 days a week.
Required to work home from 2 days a week.
Correct.
So you save on gas, you save on your commute, you get an extra 45 minutes, two ways, which means you can get a workout in, or you might be able to read or spend some more time with your kids.
Or in that case, I got an extra 90 minutes to work.
Well, that also. And maybe that's what these smart companies understand, is that they might actually get more productivity out of you. I'm not sure. But this article from GoBankingRates.com suggests there are 10 cities in the United States with the absolute most vacant office space. And what I'll tell you is a couple of them seem to me to be very, very obvious. Okay. With that, there's a few that kind of surprise me.
Which one surprised you?
So, well, let's just go into it. 10 cities with the most empty office space comes in, let's see, number 10, as in not having the most, but having the least and still make the list, was actually most surprising to me in Atlanta at 14.1%.
It wasn't surprising to me.
Really? Okay, so what do you know about Atlanta that I don't know?
Well, so let's look at the top half of this list. Atlanta, LA, Denver, Phoenix, and Chicago. Those are all cities that are known for massive traffic. And outside of Chicago, they all have very poor public transit systems.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm assuming that there was probably a big pushback coming out of COVID of like, hey, I don't want to commute any longer.
Well, that makes great sense.
What can I do to stay away from that?
I do know that Atlanta, compared to its population, it has horrendous traffic.
Oh, it's awful.
So Chicago, awful traffic.
Mm-hmm. Chicago has the L. Which is out of those cities by far the best in the public transit system. Yeah. But the traffic is still, it's outrageous.
So Phoenix is sprawling. So maybe there's something to that because Phoenix is so sprawling. I mean, really, it's almost Tri-Cities out there.
It is.
So maybe that's it. People are driving more miles on average. Mm-hmm. I've not heard about Phoenix having terrible traffic. I don't know Denver. I'll take your word for it because you used to live there.
It's awful.
LA has bad traffic. Chicago has bad traffic. Atlanta has bad traffic. That makes sense. Just for me, Atlanta, industry has grown substantially with the entertainment industry in the last several years. Lots of movies get made there. It's the Southeast regionally has done really well on real estate, both residential, and I hadn't heard much about commercial. This is news to me here. And an influx of, East Coast movie making, not everything going to California, tax breaks, etc. Kind of a more moderate lean in terms of political affiliation between both left and right. Mm-hmm. Those tend to be the cities cities and states with the most opportunity to like build industry and business. So I was surprised by Atlanta. Really, it's the one that jumped off the page at me. Now, the next five, I thought, at least two of them were absolutely obvious to me. And frankly, the surprise for me was San Francisco coming in at number, 4? Coming in at number 4, because I thought if you asked me in a vacuum, I'd have told you it was number 1.
Number 1.
It's 16.4% vacancy. Washington, D.C. is not surprising to me. I've had an influx of crime in city centers, especially in the Northeast. And so I can see people working remotely there. DFW and Houston, both not surprising to me, although it would seem like I would lump them in with Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Because of increased industry, but there's been overbuilding.
There has.
I think there's been overbuilding and oversprawl in DFW and Houston, so not surprising there. San Rafael, California is like, how did that one even make the list for consideration? I'm not sure.
It's Silicon Valley area, and I'm assuming that because it is so tech forward out there that they were probably the first to adopt working. They were the first to adopt ping pong tables in the middle of the workspace, and now they're first to adopt working from home,
I guess. Anyway, okay, so let's set up this next article before we take our next break. We've got a few seconds before we get out of here, and here's some sponsors. But pivoting from the office vacancy, let's talk about Gen X and totallythebomb.com. I don't know where we find these, but hey, totallythebomb.com with an article saying that Gen X retirement homes should actually be placed in abandoned malls. Interesting. So repurposing of commercial real estate, specifically retail in this case, I think that actually sounds like a decent trend, and I've got some things to say about that after the break. So that's all the time we have for you here in segment 2 on the Jay Pitts Show here on Talk Radio 1080. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you here in a few minutes after some sponsors. I am Jay Pitts, your host. See you in a minute. And we're back, folks. Welcome back to the Jay Pitts Show here on Talk Radio 1080. I'm your host, Jay Pitts, here with my visiting co-host, Mr. Luke Andrews. And before the break, we set up this article from totallythebomb.com suggesting that Gen X should inhabit retirement homes made from abandoned malls. Which really, I think that's like kind of a bit of a salacious headline, to be quite honest. But
first, can we talk about the website, totallythebomb.com? Because I was a little upset that domain was taken. I'm here on GoDaddy, like trying to find one for my own little personal side hustle here, and totallythebomb.com is taken.
What is that side hustle exactly, Luke?
You know what? It's probably not suitable for AM radio on a Saturday morning.
Yeah. So Jim's got his finger on the dump button, like waiting for what's going about to happen next. No, so I'm reminded of the purchase of Whole Foods by Amazon, right? And the idea that grocery was going to become delivery only from distribution centers. I'm reminded of, the locally, the Sears wing of the Oxmoor Mall getting pretty much demolished in favor of becoming a Topgolf and entertainment venue. So the repurposing of commercial real estate has been a thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to plug accidentally, but the Braces and the Mortensen Dentals and are all exactly where all the Blockbuster videos used to be.
Exactly.
Right? So you have these small strip malls that had these like anchor high traffic tenants at one point in time that, were video rental businesses that are now urgent care centers for Norton Healthcare. And so this is not a new or idea or novel idea or approach. We have these structures that have not exited their useful life. They're sitting, gathering dust. They're getting, more functionally obsolescent by the day. Okay. And essentially we should do something with them. And, what you have, and the Gen X reference here, I think, is more tongue in cheek than anything, because generally speaking, the Gen X generation is like a third the size of the baby boomer generation.
Right.
And so we still have a lot of boomers that are not in retirement homes yet.
No, and I think you're right from the tongue in cheek perspective, but I thought about this initially, and it was just interesting that this article happened to pop up. But going back to what you said at the beginning of the show, us sharing the Elizabethtown route, talking to my mom, I can't talk to her. Every second or third conversation is all about the mall that's still there that has been slowly dying for 25 years.
Of course.
And she's like, what are they going to do with this place? Because there's just a few stores that are barely hanging on. But I thought about it, and I was like, it'd be a great spot for condos to come through. I mean, you've got interior space. You could have interior walking tracks. You've got a food court that could easily be repurposed to high-end coffee shops and bakeries. You've got a few of these larger anchor stores that could be broken up into multiple condos, units. There's plenty of parking outside. You could add a pool up on the roof or outside or anywhere. I mean, there's all kinds of options. And I could see some of the older Gen X, younger boomers, looking to say, okay, I'm not looking to move into, Atria Senior Living yet.
Yeah.
But I'm looking to, a cool new condo concept. And we've got these buildings and structures that are there. Now, I know Amazon has taken over a few abandoned malls around the country, turned them into warehouses.
Right.
But it seems like a good spot for it.
The problem with taking them over as warehouses is they're in prime high traffic locations because they were purchased, developed, and built to be visible.
Yeah.
Right. And so, what you see now is you see probably more often, and we see it locally quite a bit, the old Kmart becomes a peddler's mall. Right. And of course, that's not the highest and best use, but, unless somebody wants to come in and redevelop. And what we're also seeing, which I think makes this highly skeptical. It makes me highly skeptical on this particular conversion idea. Conversion never seems to work to me. Now, it's wasteful on our part. It's wasteful on our part. But what ends up happening always is these buildings get demolished and they build brand new apartments on top of them. And those retail locations, right? That's where people want to live now. They want to live close to everything.
Yeah.
They want to be somewhat walkable, even in suburban environments. I'm thinking of the new apartment complex, I don't know the name, on Shelbyville Road, right next to Target. Right. And Kroger in Middletown.
Oh, yeah.
Which I guess isn't technically Middletown. It's kind of Middletown, but, new Middletown, we'll call it. And you literally walk to Target. You walk to like 15 different restaurants, right? You can walk to Kroger and grocery shop. Like, that's what people want. And so they build these new luxury high-end apartments. The funny thing about this article, and probably most staggering, is they make the claim, according to Wall Street Journal, they cite Wall Street Journal, that in 10 years' time, there may only be 150 shopping malls left in existence nationwide. That's 3 per state.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. Like, so if you had one shopping mall, I suppose if Mall St. Matthews and Oxmoor Mall still exists in 10 years, then Louisville's overserved because that means it only leaves one for the rest of
Kentucky.
Kentucky.
For the remainder of the state, right.
And we're not a large state.
No, because you got to think California's got to have 6.
Or 10.
Yeah.
And we're going to, so we'd be on the side of having probably less than 3, which tells me that it may just be Oxmoor at that point. I don't know. They seem to be investing a little bit more. Which
they do.
Which brings about another story for probably another time about the story of the development of Oxmoor Mall. Are you familiar?
I don't know that I am.
I'm going to tease it so that you guys come back and watch future episodes. But it's on a 100-year ground lease that makes it much more feasible to continue to exist because it is that the land is in a family trust,
right?
So the polo fields to the rear that you can see from I-64, that's all owned by the same family, a very wealthy family that doesn't need to cash out. And they did a ground lease on that, and it is very, very, very favorable to the owners of Oxmoor Mall.
Okay.
All right. So anything else on this article, Luke, you want to talk about before we get going?
I don't think so.
I mean, it's just another one of those trends.
Yeah.
It's fun to speculate. It's fun to talk about what this structure may be used for in the future. But the truth is, I just think they all get knocked down eventually.
Well, it's hard to think that they just get torn down, and it's fun to think, okay, well, how can I take what I've already got and make it into something?
It's like house flipping. I always say house flipping is the most fun thing you can do in real estate.
Yeah,
because you watch the transformation, and you find something ugly and you make it pretty and new. It's
real vision that's right there.
It is, and it's required. So, all right, let's move on to Gen Z while we're on the topic of generations in real estate. Let's talk about Gen Z. So we have an article from businessinsider.com that essentially contends that Gen Z, the headline is Gen Z is coming for the housing market. What's your take on this article, man? I'm curious to know where you're at on this.
I think it's another one of those that it's fun to speculate and it's fun to see. And yeah, they're the up and coming group, the ones who aren't currently homeowners who are moving into the market. Coming for the real estate market, I don't know that I quite buy that. I still think that it's boomers and Gen X are kind of leading the way. Yes. Boomers obviously on the side of the listings with Gen X, coming through some listings, some on the buy side. What's your take?
Statistically, actually, the millennial generation drives the real estate market now, by the way. There's reasons for that. Boomers are hesitant to downsize, so they don't bring as many listings as they should to the marketplace. And millennials, right, the children of the boomers, have taken some financial advantage, which, by the way, did you know that 1/7 of the... No, that's not the right word. So I'm going to have to look this up because I'm going to butcher it. I think it's 70% of the world's wealth is held by United States baby boomers. I want to.
70%.
I'm going to fact check that in the break. I'm going to fact check that on the break and come back with you on that. But I want to say something like 70% of the entire world's wealth is held by the baby boomer generation in the United States alone.
Interesting.
But so I guess my point in saying that, it's a substantial amount, whatever it is.
Well, it is. And I look at the baby boomers, and in generations past, decades past, it seems like they could, get to their retirement age. They had the big house where they raised the families, and now all of a sudden it's time to downsize. They can put a little cash in their pocket, have a smaller space, all on one level.
But they don't want it.
Well, they don't want it. But now when you look at what some of these downsized houses are, it's like they're going to half the square footage. But because of the upgrades that are in there, the price is potentially more. At the very least, it's equal to what they're selling for. They're not putting any cash back in the pocket.
Well, substantial differences about Gen Z is that they have a high rate of desire for homeownership, which was not originally stated for millennials. Mm-hmm. Millennials have flip-flopped. At younger ages, millennials showed less interest in homeownership. Mm-hmm. And since that has flip-flopped, that has reversed. They have very high rates. The Gen Z coming for the real estate market, to me, I'm going to sell that. I'm not buying this because it's just a smaller generation.
It's clickbait.
The millennials are going to generate housing for decades. Once the boomers finally are forced to downsize, or they unfortunately die off due to old age, it won't be Gen X and it won't be Gen Z. It will be the millennials to carry the torch.
Love it.
I really, really genuinely believe that. And we've, because I'm a millennial old, I've coined that term. I'm born in the very first year of the millennial generation.
Elder millennials.
The elder millennial or millennial old.
Yeah.
Millennial olds, have proven to be very interested in real estate, have proven to be very similar to their parents' generation in a lot of ways in terms of values. And, it's just... It's the thing. There's just so many more of us than there are Gen Z or Gen X.
Right.
And we're going to inherit the wealth of the 70% of the world, or whatever the number actually ends up being. We'll report back. But we're gonna inherit that wealth. So, all right, folks, that's all we got for you here in segment 3. We're going to cut to a few sponsors, coming back with a little more fun and hijinks in segment 4. Right here on the Jay Pitts Show on Talk Radio 1080. For Luke Andrews, I am Jay Pitts, and we'll see you after the break. And we're back, folks. Welcome back to the Jay Pitts Show here on Talk Radio 1080. I'm your host, Jay Pitts, here with my co-host filling in for Ryan Harris, Mr. Luke Andrews. And we've arrived. We've talked all the heavy real estate stuff, and now it's time for the fun. So, Luke, are you aware of, you mentioned it before, but are you aware of the bombshell testimony in Congress? I guess it was a week ago. What is it? Yeah, about a week ago, where we essentially, as a federal government, have acknowledged the existence of aliens. You're familiar with this?
Vaguely, yes.
Okay, vaguely. All right. So does that mean you do not follow political news very much?
It doesn't mean that I don't follow political news, but I'm coaching everything under the sun for my two boys, and so watching the news ends up falling down on the list, along with sleep. Sleep I sacrifice, and you and I are in the same boat there, by the way, because I coach every day, and it leaves a little time for superfluous activities. But I do follow. We're still getting more sleep than Ryan, though, right now.
Apparently, yeah. Apparently, well, I don't know. They just got back from the hospital.
They got that newborn, that fog. That they're in, so.
I mean, has he really had enough time to be sleep deprived?
Oh, it's about to hit the fan.
Oh, it's about to hit him. And I told him, Jim's laughing. I've told him, we've sat in this room and I've told him multiple times that life is different now.
Everybody tells you, but you don't actually know it.
He goes on those runs, long runs on Saturday. I was like, bro,
he ain't getting there. That's gonna be a long marathon.
You cash in a lot of chips to get a Saturday morning run. I'm just telling you,
yes.
Pick your battles, okay? Pick your battles. Anyway, neither here nor there, because we know Ryan will be listening to this. All right. 3 former military officials told Congress Wednesday that they believe the government knows much, much more about UFOs than we're even being told. The House Oversight Subcommittee held a hearing officially known as the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, or UAP hearing. So UAP is a big one. We're going to have to talk about that here in a minute. But essentially, this is the 5 most memorable moments from that Congress's UFO hearing. All right, let's keep going. So number 1, Dave Grush, a former U.S. intelligence officer, said that he is absolutely certain that the U.S. government is in possession of UAPs. So it's not called UFOs anymore. It's called UAPs. They are in possession of UAPs, and he cited interviews conducted with 40 witnesses over a 4-year period. And the U.S. Defense Department has mobilized efforts to analyze these reported UAP sightings and was involved in a multi-decade program at the Pentagon that endeavored to collect and analyze crashed UAPs.
So let me clarify here. These 40 witnesses over 4 years. Do we know anything about these? Because it seems like anytime you see somebody on the news talking about aliens,
it was like a flying aspirin.
It's the very worst things that people think about Kentucky. It's always the person with no shoes, no teeth, and they're the same people that have been on the news multiple times talking about what the tornado sounded like. So who did he actually interview? Do we know?
We don't. But, and I think there's probably some of that to it. But I will say that a number of them were Air Force pilots.
Okay.
A number of them were actual Air Force pilots that witnessed flying. Now, this is not just crashed UAPs. These are actually literal unidentified flying objects.
So these are people that know about things that float around in the air.
And they say that I am aware as a top secret classified kind of, person that possesses that info. I don't know what that's called.
Yep.
But we fly a stealth bomber, and we've never seen technology that's capable of what I just saw. It's on that level. These are military pilots. Dave Fravor, a former Navy commander, said he and 3 fellow military pilots spotted a white tic-tac shaped object in 2004 hovering above their jets just above the Pacific Ocean. As he descended to inspect the sighting, he claimed the unidentified aircraft, which he said bore no visible rotors, wings, or exhaust, began to ascend and approach his fighter jet. He then claimed the UAP vanished, only to reappear seconds later, but this time it was 60 miles away.
So this is like some Doc Brown, Marty McFly, like he gunned it to 85 and all of a sudden he's 60
he's in a new dimension, apparently. Anyway, so
did you say tic-tac shape or DeLorean shape?
Tic-tac shape, not DeLorean. And not aspirin shaped, like I said a minute ago. I got that wrong. But
that's all.
Here's the thing. I don't think we have to go through the rest of this. I think the crazy part of this, right? And frankly, I ought to give a little nod to Joe Rogan because as I've been asked on this podcast, I do listen to the Joe Rogan podcast every once in a while. He had a conversation very similar to this with someone. And he said the thing that he just can't believe is that this is not what everyone's talking about.
Exactly.
And his response, I tend to agree with, is we just get so much thrown at us these days. It's like, how are you supposed to focus on something you've not personally witnessed? Right. And we all know that the news has a limited amount of trust from the public, frankly. So is this a thing? Is this for real?
Well, he's exactly right. They're throwing so much at us. I just found out that Twitter kind of changed their whole branding because I got new notifications on my phone. I'm like, what is this X?
What is X?
What is this?
But it's still called a tweet. I need to ask Elon this.
Yeah.
It's still called a tweet, but it's no longer Twitter.
Well, did you call him or?
I didn't call him.
Okay.
I did, however, watch Iron Man 2 last night, to which Elon makes a cameo. And I will say, the last 10 years or so have not been kind.
No.
He looked a lot younger and a lot healthier in that movie. All right, let's move on to Would You Rather. We got about 5 minutes, Luke, so this ought to be fun. All right, so we're going to start with a couple of real estate. And so here's the way it's going to go. I'm going to ask you, would you rather? You're going to give your answer. I'll give you my answer, and then we discuss.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, so real estate, would
Nervous.
you rather? Yeah, I'm totally gonna.
Well, because my kids play Would You Rather. I got a 14 and a 12-year-old boy, so it's would you rather eat drain hair or?
Oh yeah, we're not going there.
Okay, good.
Would you rather sell a house to an investor or an owner occupant?
I would rather sell a house to an investor.
Okay, I think that you would probably. I think you would guess that I'd say the same thing. But I'm going to change that actually. Look, you can't do without either.
Yeah, exactly.
A healthy business has both.
Yep.
I just think it's much more impact. I think it's more fun to work with investors, but the owner occupant is more impactful. Mm-hmm. You get to really change their life. You get to really help them achieve a dream or buy their forever home or put them in a place to raise their family, all that stuff. But investors.
Well, now you're making me feel bad here. You're like, oh, we get to do all this great for humanity, and I'm just over here like, no, I want to solve puzzles. And
Luke's like, I want to sell them an investment so that I can make them money and then sell them a whole lot more investments. Yeah. Don't tell me that didn't factor in.
It factored in.
It was in the calculus for me too.
Factored in.
All right. Would you rather sell a house to at a small price, cash buyer, or a big price finance buyer?
Define small price, define big price. In our market, that is an average of
$100,000 cash or $500,000 financed.
$500,000 financed.
Why?
It just, if you would have said $1 million plus, I think that there's a lot more headaches that go along with that.
With double a lot more headaches go on with double the money.
Correct. Like I could sell 2 500,000s a lot easier than I could 1 million.
Of course.
But I think the difference between a 500 finance, I think that's such the norm anymore.
Yeah.
That I'm perfectly okay with that.
Okay. All right. I'm going to agree, and it's just because it's more money, and the more money I make, the less
the difference in work isn't much. But to go back to your previous point, you're probably changing the lives more of $100,000 buyer than.
This is true. See, so
we're in here for the good of humanity.
I can't be magnanimous all the time. All right, rapid fire. Okay, don't need a lot long because we're running out of time. Residential or commercial?
Residential.
I say I'm commercial. I've done a lot more residential in my career, but commercial, man, I'm addicted. I like
it is fun.
I like the business. I like the challenge. Anyway, okay, let's move on to personal.
Okay,
burger or steak?
Steak.
Oh,
I love a good burger. Don't get me wrong. But the burger has to, and I don't need like this knife and fork, put everything on there. Just like a real crisp piece of lettuce, slice of American cheese, not overcooked, and a nice bun.
See, I go to Les Moux and I order a burger, even though it supposedly has the best cut of meat in town. Yeah. It's because I'm really picky about steak.
Yeah.
And I have to have it a certain way. Ruby's for my money is phenomenal. If you tell me Ruby's, I'm taking Ruby's.
See, but Ruby's is at the bottom of my list.
Oh, all right. We're not going to argue that. All right. Second, NFL playoffs or March Madness?
Oh man. Can I take both, Bob?
No, you have one.
Give me March Madness.
I'm going NFL playoffs.
Okay.
And that's just because my team's been awful the last couple of years. Maybe you
have. But there's nothing like that first weekend and that Thursday and Friday. I used to, when I was in corporate America, taking off work and just all day long.
So we're going to have to talk about my betting strategy for day 1 and 2 of the tournament on another episode. We don't have time for today, but I'm taking NFL playoffs. But I will say I had a blast Saturday morning at the TBT watching the old school U of L players. They brought me back to where I really loved basketball. Okay, last one.
Okay.
Would you rather be dropped off in the desert or the ocean? You have nothing. It's just you and whatever clothes you're wearing.
Ooh. I'm going to say desert.
I'm with you. I can't stand not knowing what's below me.
Yep.
You know, and plus it's Shark Week. I don't know if you saw any of that. The Megalodon, no, I'm not doing it. I am definitely going desert, and I'm like shielding myself from the sun and like digging a hole during the day.
I can run a heck of a lot faster than I can swim, and I'm running to wherever I can get.
I think the moral of the story is you are in real trouble no matter what.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's about all the time we got for you today, folks. Hopefully we had a little bit of fun and you enjoyed the episode. We will be back next week with another episode of the Jay Pitts Show. As always, we appreciate your support here and on all the social channels where you can follow us. Just search Jay Pitts Realtor. I am your host, Jay Pitts, of the Jay Pitts Show here on Talk Radio 1080. For Luke Andrews, we will catch you next time.